Some of the kindest people you know are the most exhausted. They smile, they help, they show up. They're always there when someone needs them. But if you pay attention, there's something off. They're tired in a way they can't explain, because their kindness is costing them more than anyone sees. And the truth is, kindness isn't always what it looks like. We grow up believing that kindness is simple. Be nice. Be helpful. Be selfless. And if you follow those rules, you become a good person. But what no one tells you is this. There's a version of kindness that slowly erases you. A version that doesn't come from love, but from fear. At first, it looks admirable. It's the person who says yes to everything. The one who listens for hours, the one who never argues, never complains, never makes things difficult. They're easy to be around, safe, reliable. But underneath that kindness, there's a quiet tension, because they're not just being kind, they're trying to avoid something. Rejection, conflict, disapproval. And that's where the psychology begins. For many people, kindness isn't a personality trait, it's a survival strategy. It usually starts early. A child grows up in an environment where emotions are unpredictable. Maybe love feels conditional. Maybe expressing anger leads to punishment. Maybe being difficult makes things worse. So the child learns something powerful. Be good, and things will stay calm. Be easy, and people will stay. Be kind, and you'll be accepted. And that lesson stays. It becomes automatic. They grow into someone who prioritizes harmony over honesty, peace over truth, acceptance over authenticity. And over time, they lose something without realizing it themselves. There's a moment you can recognize this pattern. It's when someone is asked a simple question, "What do you want?" And they hesitate. Not because they don't understand the question, but because they're not used to answering it. Their attention has always been focused outward. What do you need? What will make you happy? What will keep things okay? So when it comes to themselves, there's silence. And that silence is where the dark side of kindness lives. Because the more you ignore your own needs, the harder it becomes to recognize them at all. There's a story that plays out in relationships all the time. Imagine someone who gives everything. They remember the small details. They show up when it matters. They support their partner endlessly. At first, it feels perfect, but slowly, something shifts. They start feeling unappreciated, used, drained, and they don't understand why, because in their mind, they were just being kind. But here's what's actually happening. Their kindness wasn't coming from a place of fullness. It was coming from a place of fear. Fear of losing the relationship. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if they stop giving, they'll stop being loved. So they overgive, they overextend, they oversacrifice, and without realizing it, they create an imbalance. Because relationships need reciprocity. But when one person is always giving, the other stops noticing, stops appreciating, stops even asking, because the dynamic has already been set. And this is where kindness turns into self-abandonment. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you ignore your boundaries to keep the peace, you teach people something. You teach them how to treat you. And more importantly, you teach yourself that your needs are optional. There's another side to this that's even harder to see. Sometimes kindness isn't just about avoiding pain. Sometimes it's about seeking value. There are people who learn that being helpful is the only way they matter, that being needed is the only way they're valued. So they become the fixer, the supporter, the one who holds everything together. And at first, it feels good. Because people depend on them, appreciate them, need them, but over time, that need becomes their identity. And without it, they feel lost, so they keep giving. Even when it hurts, even when it drains them. Because stopping would mean facing a question they've avoided their entire life. Who am I if I'm not needed? And that question is uncomfortable because it forces them to look at something deeper. The possibility that their kindness wasn't just generosity, it was a way to secure their place in people's lives. A way to feel important. A way to feel enough. But here's where it becomes dangerous. Because when kindness is tied to your sense of worth, you stop giving freely. You start giving with expectation. Not consciously, but emotionally. You expect appreciation, recognition, loyalty. And when those expectations aren't met, it turns into resentment. Suddenly, the kindest person in the room feels the most unappreciated, and they don't understand why, because they never saw their kindness as a transaction. But deep down, it was. Not for gain, but for validation. There's also something subtle that happens over time. People who are too kind start attracting people who take advantage. Not intentionally at first, but patterns attract patterns. Someone who struggles to say no will eventually meet someone who doesn't hesitate to ask. Someone who avoids conflict will eventually meet someone who pushes boundaries. And this creates a dynamic where kindness becomes a resource. And the other person learns to use it. Not always maliciously, sometimes just naturally. Because when there are no boundaries, there's nothing to push against. And slowly, the kind person becomes exhausted. Not because they gave, but because they never stopped. There's a deeper psychological layer here. People who rely on excessive kindness often struggle with boundaries because boundaries feel like rejection. Saying no feels like conflict, like disappointing someone, like risking connection. So they avoid it, even when they need it, even when it would protect them. And over time, they build relationships that look peaceful on the surface, but are quietly one-sided underneath. There's a moment that many people like this experience. It doesn't happen suddenly, it builds. Slowly. It's the moment where they realize they're tired. Not just physically, emotionally. Tired of always being available. Tired of always being understanding. Tired of always putting themselves second. And for the first time, they feel something unfamiliar, frustration, but they don't know what to do with it because expressing it feels wrong, feels selfish, feels like breaking the role they've always played. And that's the hardest part because the role of the kind one becomes a cage, a comfortable one, a familiar one. But still, a cage, because it doesn't allow for honesty. It doesn't allow for boundaries. It doesn't allow for real connection, only performance. And breaking out of that role feels terrifying. Because if you're not the kind one anymore, who are you? But here's the truth that changes everything. Kindness isn't supposed to cost you yourself. Real kindness includes you. It includes your boundaries, your needs, your truth. It doesn't ask you to disappear so others can feel comfortable. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your well-being to maintain peace. It's balanced, mutual, honest, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. Because real kindness means saying no when you need to. It means disappointing people sometimes. It means choosing yourself, even when it feels unfamiliar. And that's where the shift begins, not in becoming less kind, but in becoming real. Because when kindness comes from a place of self-respect, it doesn't drain you. It strengthens you. It creates relationships that are equal, connections that are genuine, and a life that actually feels like yours. So if you've ever felt like your kindness is exhausting you, if you've ever felt like you give more than you receive, if you've ever wondered why being nice doesn't always feel good, then maybe this isn't a flaw. Maybe it's a pattern, one that made sense at some point, but doesn't have to define you forever. And if this made you pause for a second, if it made you see your own behavior a little more clearly, then maybe you're already starting to shift something. Because awareness is where change begins. And if you want to keep exploring these patterns, the ones most people don't even realize they're living, you might want to stay around, not because you have to, but because understanding yourself might be the kindest thing you've never allowed yourself to do.